Well, hey there everybody, and welcome back to more Monsters of Folklore. Now, I've done a video on Indrid Cold explaining who he was. This video, I'm going to be digging a little bit deeper into Woodrow Derenberger's encounters with Indrid Cold and a few others. And here we go. Now, for several months towards the end of 1966, all of the eyes in the world were focused on West Virginia, specifically on Point Pleasant. Scores of people all reported seeing something similar. This creature became known as the Mothman. Now all of this seemed to lead to a terrible disaster when the Silver Bridge collapsed. All of this dominated headlines and newspapers. However, buried deep inside the pages of the press were claims of another bizarre sighting that was overshadowed by both Mothman and the Silver Bridge. His name was Indrid Cold, also known as the Grinning Man, and this figure has earned a reputation in American folklore that persists to this very day. Now, Woodrow Derenberger made his living by selling sewing machines. On November 2nd, 1966 was a long day for him. By 7 p.m. he was driving along a hill just outside Parkersburg on Interstate 77 and was looking forward to arriving, home. Now, on this cold and wet evening, the last thing he wanted was to have a stop on the side of the road to replace a sewing machine that had become dislodged in the back of his vehicle. Now, the sewing machine was undamaged and he quickly resituated it. Now, Woodrow might have parked a little bit better, but he left enough room for other commuters to pass by his stationary vehicle while he tended to his business. None of these drivers came forward to confirm Woodrow's account of what followed. Now, having returned to the driver's seat of his van and continued on his way, a set of headlights passed him and began to slow down in front of him. For the second time, Woodrow had to stop. This time, he had to do so in the middle of the road. Careful not to dislodge any more of his sewing machines in his van, Woodrow was driving conservatively and likely not driving anywhere near the speed limit. Despite this, his first thought centered on a patrol car and a possible sobriety test. He quickly dismissed this conclusion when he realized that he was not looking at a car at all. Whatever this was, it was shaped much like an old-fashioned kerosene lamp and a central bulge and flared edges. A door slid open and a man exited this vehicle. According to Woodrow, this man was average in many ways. He had a deep tan and hair that was dark and swept back. A deep tan was unusual for this time of year, but this extraordinary broad grin this man wore was easily the most striking thing about his appearance. As soon as the man exited, he began to head in Woodrow's way. As the distance shortened, Woodrow noted that this man had a dark overcoat on, and beneath that he wore a metallic-looking uniform that was green and glistened in the limited light. This man's arms were folded, and both sets of knuckles seemed to nestle within his own arms. Now, the man spoke. He identified himself as Indrid Cold and said that he had came from a place less powerful than the United States. He was very reassuring and admitted that he was, flesh and blood, just like Woodrow, and in no way special or spectacular. Now that there should be a red flag for anybody. Indrid also openly encouraged Woodrow to report the encounter to the authorities, and confirmation would follow. Before he returned to his vehicle, Indrid revealed that this would be just the first of many attempts that the pair would have. The whole message was delivered by something similar to, telepathy, and not a single word was spoken verbally. Both Indrid Cold and the vehicle departed the scene. So what I'm saying is Indrid basically did not speak. He spoke to Woodrow, through telepathy. Indrid Cold did keep his word. Woodrow received several additional visits from the same man. On some of these subsequent visits, Indrid was not alone. Now, Derenberger revealed that his new friend came from a planet called Lanulos, and that during one visit, he was allowed to take a trip there. After the last of these meetings, Woodrow sought out renowned UFO investigator John Keel, who happened to also write a book about the Mothman, and reported events in great detail. Now, during Keel's investigation, he often received mysterious phone calls from someone calling himself Indrid Cold. This was nothing new for him, of course, but he did mention persons and not person. Now, Keel believed that whoever phoned him was an informed third party. Despite this, Keel wrote a foreword in Derenberger's book, Visitors from Lanulos. Now, Woodrow was not the only person to report an appearance from this sinister-looking grinning man. On the very same night on the very same road, 2 other men saw an elongated object land in front of their vehicle. They were also forced to stop, and they watched as a man disembarked and headed their way. He wore a dark coat and folded both arms in such a way that could be considered uncomfortable. He asked both men questions that seemed pointless to them before the man returned to the craft and substantially took off. Now, several weeks before Derenberger had his encounter, a pair of boys met a man that scared both of them. The boys, James and Martin, were walking home along 4th Street in Elizabeth, New Jersey. Now, they reached a corner opposite a local landmark called the Turnpike. This was an elevated area with a high wire fence and a steep incline. They reported that behind the fence stood the strangest man they had ever saw. Neither had any idea how the man got there or where he came from. The man just stood there grinning. There are other versions of the legend involving other sightings. However, not much else has been heard of the Grinning Man, Indrid Cold, since the 1960s. Who he even is still unknown, but many consider the encounters to have been basically a hoax. Now, nonetheless, he has earned a legendary reputation that persists to this day among the men in black and the black-eyed kids. Interestingly though, a recent admission by a man on Reddit claims that he was Indrid Cold. And what's really interesting about the encounters with Indrid Cold is they say that when he comes around, Mothman will soon follow. It's pretty cool, but in all honesty, I only thought Indrid was only in West Virginia. But when I was doing some more research and stuff like that, the last, paragraph that I, read to you, it claimed that he was in New Jersey as well. So it's really hard to tell because there has been sightings apparently of Mothman in other states, which is interesting and scary nonetheless, because when Mothman appears, things happen. Like when the bridge collapsed and a few other things happened, people claim to have seen Mothman, but they claim to see Indrid before Mothman showed up. Very interesting that things like this, do occur, because you don't know if it's true, made up. You really don't know. Do I believe in the Mothman and Indrid Cold? Sure, why not? Indrid Cold apparently is supposed to be an alien, and the Mothman is a harbinger of doom, basically. It's pretty interesting. If you never heard of Indrid Cold, exactly who he is, you can check out the other video. It just basically explains who he is. This one, I kind of went more in depth with the encounter. It's pretty cool. But as always, it's Monsters of Folklore. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe, like it, comment. Do you believe in Indrid Cold and the Mothman? Let me know. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.